Hey there, it's Jennifer. So glad you're here. This is an edited, shortened replay of a live that I did last week where I talked about innovative crafting products. I really like how these small crafty businesses are pushing the envelope, coming up with new products that allow us to get even more creative in our craft room. I talk a bit about that, and then I share some of my favorite innovative products that have come out lately and techniques and ways to use them and ways to stretch them so you can get more and more from them. Now, keep in mind that I did my best to edit this down, but it's kind of hard to do. I really do encourage you to watch the full live, even if you just watch it in bits and pieces. I feel like I share a lot of information that might be helpful to you. I keep my lives on topic, so I encourage you to watch that, and I'll link to it up here in the top right and in the YouTube description below. Also in that YouTube description, I have information on a great free gift that's happening when I put this video up, so you can check that out. And let's get started. I've got a lot to share in today's edited replay.
So I think one of the things that I really liked about the last 2 years in our industry is I feel like companies are becoming more innovative in what they have to offer, not just stamps and dies like we had for many years. Hi, Libby. I find that so many people or so many companies are coming up with ways to kind of push the envelope and keep us interested and inspired. Now, I do want to say this right away. I know that not everybody wants or can get all of these things, right? I totally get it. And that's why I still use stamps, stencils, and dies, the basic things. But I think it's fun to see what they're coming up with. And one of the companies that I think has really done a good job pushing the envelope with creativity and being innovative is Altenew. You've seen all of these things, but I thought it'd be fun to kind of pull them all together in one live and share a bunch of them. So I have lots of things prepared here. Innovation is the key to keeping our crafting industry going, and we need that. We've been really hurt by the knockoffs. The industry has been. So when these companies come up with new things, I think it's really a great thing. Even if you just want to stick to the basics, this is a great way. This is a great thing to keep our industry going. I'm nervous. I'm not nervous. I'm anxious. I don't know why. So I apologize. But I hope that all made sense. Altenew has different subscription kits and products that you can subscribe to, but you can also just buy it separately at like a slightly higher price. I've always said I think their subscriptions are really great. The one that I'm using today is the newest. It's Butterfly Garden. I know a lot of people have already used this in a video, so you're just going to see more examples, and I have some fun spins on it today. So this is a bundle. You get all of these things together. There is a stamp set with these really unique sentiments. There's an embossing folder. There is a die, and then there are layering stencils. And the cool thing about this is you do the layering stencils to create that background, which I think is beautiful, and then the die cuts them all out. So this is kind of like, this is a zero waste product. This is something that Altenew does that I think is really innovative. They have lots of different zero waste options, and I've used almost all of them in my videos. So the whole idea is that you create a background, you cut them all out, and you get all of those little elements, and you can even use the negative space. So there's like zero waste. If you want to see all the different zero waste options, if you go to my blog and search on zero waste, all the posts I've done with the different zero waste would show up. But this is the newest one, and I'm very excited about this because I'm a big fan of the zero waste innovation, and I'm also a big fan of butterflies. I'm going to quickly do some stenciling to show you how I did it. I did some extras so that after I do the stenciling, I can show you a few different things you can do with it. So there are, I think, 5 stencils in this set. And what I want to show you, I'm hoping you can see it. Do you see there's like an etched, there you go. See the etched outline? See how, gosh, come on. Let me get my trusty blue paper. I always do this with blue paper. Hoping that shows it better. Okay, do you see how there's the bottom of the wings are an opening, but the top of the wings are an etched line. And it has that all over it. So what you can do is line up each layer. okay? And it helps you to line it up. So you don't have to use any special tricks for it. I'm actually gonna start with stencil number 2, but I'm just gonna put this on a piece of white cardstock. I have these magnets that I use with my magnetic glass work surface, and that's just gonna hold it in place for me. Let me just show you how it works, just so you can see how easy it is. I think layering stencils like this are another one of the things that I love that has been very, layering stencils have been around for a while, but I feel like they're getting more creative with it. One of the things I like is like when Altenew does the etched lines, so you can easily layer up each of the layers. Some of the layering stencils that are out there are for individual product or individual images, like a big flower, but then there are some that are like backgrounds like this one. So I'm using some of my favorite blues. These are Altenew's Fresh Dye inks. I told you I'm anxious. There are 4 colors in a family. I don't have my stickers on these yet, but there's a light, medium, dark, and extra dark. And you can buy them together or separately. And I really like that it makes it easy to figure out which go together. For example, like for this stenciling, I think I'm going to add a little bit of dark. That was actually stencil number 2. What I can do is take the etching. There's etching of the upper wing, and I line it up with the inking I've done. So I just line up the etching, and then basically I line up here, and I line up down here, because if those are lined up, I'm set. I know that they're all going to be lined up. So I'll put my magnets on here. And now I can do the bottom wings, and those are intended to be a little bit overlapped. I think I'll do this. So now I'm using the Eastern Sky. So now I'm on to stencil number 3, and again, it's really easy to line up. Now I've got some inked areas that help me line up, but really I'm just using those etched lines. So that's stencil 3. Now this stencil has butterfly details and leaves. If you wanted to do the same color over the whole thing, you could do like a gold. That would be fun. But I want to do dark blue on my butterflies and green on my leaves. So I'm using the smaller brush this time so that I can do selective inking. This is something that I really think is helpful in stepping up your layering stencil. So I'm going with the darkest blue. This is the most beautiful color. This whole family. The Eastern Sky and this one are great. And then you'll see me use some Altenew cardstock later, and the cardstock in the same color is just beautiful. I'm doing Lava Rock, which is like a dark gray. I just did a quick inking, and you can see how I was able to create that beautiful background. Isn't that fun? Now on this one, I did light blue for the little background, little doodads. And then I used green on this one for the little doodads. I kind of like this bold one. I think that's fun. So one of the things that I've been really loving that companies are really innovating about is how their stencils work. And this kind of layering stencil, especially on this one, I think you can see the etched lines really well. Can you see the etched lines there? Let me put it on. There we go, because I didn't clean it well. Do you see the etched lines? So you know how to line it up with what you've already stenciled. Now let me show you some things that you can do with this. The nice thing about this is you can take this big die, and by the way, this big die you can cut from like blue cardstock and have lots of little butterflies in blue. You could do green cardstock and get little green leaves. You don't have to use the stencils with it. So that's another nice thing about it. But I'm going to use this to cut this out. See, you line it up, and these 2 butterfly openings will line up with the stenciling that you did. So I'm hoping that this will cut okay. Now look at this. So see how you get all these butterflies and all these little stems. So there's tons of them here. Little doodad. Look at those leaves and the butterflies. All right, so it's just a fun way to get a bunch of elements easily. Okay, so that is the zero waste, and there's more here. I'm just not popping them all out. I have another thing you can do with this. So far you can use your stenciled background alone. You could use the stencil background in the die and get all those individual butterflies, or you can use the die with solid cardstock and have solid color butterflies. But another thing that you can do, you can make an impression with a die. I think I'll use my Neenah K machine. Now, most die cut machines come with a flexible embossing mat. I think Neenah's sells separately, but I think most come with it. Now, the Intracut has the dial on the side that allows you to switch between what you want to do. And I'm going to do letterpress. That's what it's called on here, is letterpress, but really it's pressing a die into cardstock. So we're not going to cut, we're just going to press and get a faux letterpress look. Yeah, I'm going to do half. Doobie-doo-doo. I'm cutting this in half just because I might want to do something else with it a little later. So now I'm just holding this here. I should have kept this whole, but whatever. So I'm just lining it up. And then I'll take those butterfly windows and line them up with the stenciling that's already done. And I'm going to put tape over here so it doesn't shift. So I cut my paper in half because I might want to do something different with the other half later. So I'm going to slide this other half out. So what I have here is, I should have showed you, this is a flexible embossing mat. It's gray with the Spellbinders platinum, but with hers, with Neenah K's, it's black. So it's a flexible mat that allows you to make an impression, which sometimes is called letterpress and sometimes is also called dry embossing, just to confuse us all, but allows you to press a die into cardstock instead of cutting with it. So just follow your manufacturer's instructions for a sandwich. The nice thing about Neenah's is you don't need to change the sandwich. You always use the same thing, you just change the dial on the side. Except for when you want to do this technique, you need that flexible mat in there. All right, so I'm going to put the top plate on and run this through. I made an impression with the die instead of cutting it. So if you look, see how it's kind of pillowy looking? The butterflies and leaves are kind of pillowy looking. If you look at the back, you can kind of see it too. No, it's not going to cut the mat because the mat is flexible. So the mat keeps the machine from cutting your paper and cutting the mat. Isn't that gorgeous? I love that. So that's another way you can use these stencils that line up with the die. So let me show you some examples that I've done, because you know me. So right here, I have a card that I made using that technique. So if you look at that butterfly area, see how it's got the pillowy look around it? That's the technique I just showed you. Now let me show you the rest of this. Let's do that background. This is another of the, as you could probably guess, one of the other innovative products that has been out for a while now that I think keeps getting better and better, and that is the Better Press system from Spellbinders. It does require you to have the Better Press system. However, we have since learned that you can use these, which are called press plates. Press plates are what's designed to work in the Better Press. These work great in here, but we have also learned that you can foil with these press plates. So you can put them on your glimmer machine and foil with these. You can also make an impression, just like I showed you, with this, which I can demonstrate in a moment. So there are many ways you can use this. Now I have linked in my description below at the bottom of all the supplies is a video showing the 3 different ways I like to use press plates, and 2 of them do not involve the Better Press system. Now I talk about how this is definitely the most innovative product that I've seen in a long time. I have been using this more and more for 2 reasons. One, I really like it. The results are incredible, crisp, so good. Just so crisp you can't get with stamping. The other is, I know for a fact that more and more companies are going to come out with press plates. So chances are your favorite company will come out with press plates. So the Better Press system is from Spellbinders, but Altenew makes them. So this is the Spellbinders logo for the Better Press, but Altenew makes these press plates. And it's a great kind of collaboration between the companies. So I know it's another system, but I'm telling you, I see more and more happening. So this is the Better Press system. I tape a piece of clear plastic on here, just some packaging, so I don't have to clean my better press, the ink wipes off that clear piece very easily. So you take your press plate, and you can tell it's a press plate because it has like this dull silver. It's not like bright silver like a die. See how that's different? Dies are shiny. This is like a dull. And so you know it's a press plate. So I'm going to put that in that little tick mark area in the center, right there in the center. And then I'll put my cardstock in the center too. Now remember, this press plate you could use with your glimmer machine to foil. As far as inks, Spellbinders does sell inks for the Better Press system. The nice thing about their inks is that they're smaller, and so you can get into little areas better and not make as much of a mess, for smaller press plates. Ink cubes are good for it too. I haven't found an ink that doesn't work. I do find that Altenew fresh dye inks work really well because it's a little bit of a juicier ink, and it just seems to work well. And the nice thing about this technique is it's foolproof. So I ink that up. It's not even, that's okay. I'm going to take the cardstock that I've taped here, and it pops onto these magnets. And so the paper's kind of floating over the inked press plate. But when you put it through your platinum machine or your Intercut, I think it also works with the Sizzix machine, but I don't have that. It pushes those plates together and transfers the ink and makes an impression. Look at that. You see that detail? That's detail you couldn't get with stamping. So that is the Better Press system. I'm going to do more techniques with this later on because I think there are so many things you can do with it. And what I'm doing later on, I haven't done in a video, so I'm hoping that it inspires you. These two are my favorite Altenew cardstock colors. I used ultramarine here. So I did ultramarine cardstock, and then I used the slightly darker azurite ink and just did the same process. So Altenew cardstock is a little lighter weight. It's like 80 or 90 pounds, and you can still see that you get crisp results with a tiny impression. And I like that tone-on-tone little look in the background. So I just showed you how to use this with the Better Press system. You can also use it with a glimmer machine and foil. I'm not going to demonstrate that today. But here's the other thing you can do. This time I'm using the Spellbinders Platinum, and I'm following the instructions to make an impression or dry emboss with a die. And again, anytime you want to use your machine to make an impression, you need that flexible mat in there so that it won't cut. I'm following the instructions on making an impression or dry embossing with a die, just like I did when I did this piece. It's the same sandwich I did for this. But this time, instead of using a die, I'm using a press plate. You could mix this with water if you wanted to, but I'm lazy. So I'm going to take my press plate and just put it on top. Remember, there's a flexible mat under here, and run it through like I would do making an impression with a die, but this time I'm using a press plate. Look at that. Look at that. Look how cool that is. Can you see how cool that is? So that is using a press plate without the Better Press system. So I'm using it with what came with my Spellbinders machine, that flexible mat. You could also put ink on this, carefully lay it down and run it through, and it would leave ink behind. But I just love that texture. It looks like an embossing folder. So press plates don't have to be used with just the Better Press system. And I have found these detail press plates work really well. They actually foil better than some foil plates. So you'll see a lot of companies are going to stop making foil plates and only make Better Press or press plates because it works with foil too. And I think Altenew is one of them. This frame is part of a set from Kristina Werner, A7 thin frames. She also has A2. So here is the A7 and here is the A2. And they also come with some word dies. I have the A7 linked below, but why I use these so much is I love creating a thin frame. But I don't know about you, but sometimes when my pressure's too much in my machine, it causes the die to kind of warp a little bit, or you get like a curved edge. It's slight, but it drives me crazy. So like a curved edge, if a die is too thin and big. So what Kristina did is she added this extra metal around the outside to keep it from doing that. So you'll end up with a perfect thin frame with this. And that's what I used. I used this one here. I think this is from the A2 for that gold frame. As for the sentiment on this one, I love this sentiment. I really like doing just because and hugs and things like that because you can use it for a lot of different occasions. You see me use them a lot. And this one has hugs, just because, and with kindness, which I am a big fan of. So I'll use this big flower later, but I use the just because here. And isn't that sweet?
Okay, my next few cards use some butterflies that I created off screen just to prepare for the live.
I used the same Butterfly Garden layering stencils to create this background. But instead of doing all the butterflies blue or the same color, I did different butterflies, different colors. So I used a small blending brush so I could do different colors. And then for the stencil that adds the doodads in the background, I use a gold pigment ink. So I have a little bit of shine on there. All right, so I did the same process, but I did this butterfly pink, this one blue, or orange, yellow, okay? I really like that background. Then I also created this little folded piece of vellum. I did this to save time so I could show you more things. On here, I used the Butterfly Garden stamp set. These are all in the same bundle. I used that Hello, 3.5 by 3. Okay, the sentiment, I heat embossed with a black glitter embossing powder. I used Ranger Black Sparkle. You can see there's some sparkle in there. So this is from, I believe this is from the A7. Yep, this is from Kristina's A7 frame die set. It's linked below. I want to put a little gold frame around the edges here. So I have here Altenew double-sided adhesive sheet. Altenew double-sided adhesive sheet is one of my most used products. So I put that on, I put the double-sided adhesive on the back of a piece of Altenew brushed gold cardstock. I really like their brushed gold because it's a little bit less shiny, a little less ostentatious, and it looks nice with the gold metallic ink. The adhesive's on the back, so this will cut through the adhesive and I'll end up with a frame sticker. Pull off the release paper, and this one I'm gonna put right along the edge of the front. So I'm gonna put the corner up here. Now, one of the nice things about this, the double-sided adhesive, is you do have wiggle room time. Sorry if my head gets in the way. You do have wiggle room time. You can press it down lightly to make sure you get it where you want it. And then once you have it in place, you can press down firmly with a bone folder or your fingers to really make it secure. So that looks good to me. So I'm going to come in with a bone folder and just press that down. So now the vellum on the front has a nice gold frame. I just thought that gave it a little nice definition, and I want it to kind of hang over here. So this can be a weird tri-fold card. We're going to see if it works. This is a side folding A2 note card. So it's 4.25 by 5.5 inches. I'm going to rotate this. Watch, I'm going to rotate it so it opens backwards. So the opening is on the left. Then I'm going to cover the front with this stenciled piece so that the entire front of the note card is covered with the stenciling and it opens backwards. On this here, on the inside of this folded vellum, I put adhesive, and I'm going to tuck the open end into it. So it kind of wraps around the front like that. There we go. And then I have another piece of plain cardstock here just to put on the back to kind of sandwich that vellum in. Let's see. There we go. This now opens like that. I just thought that was fun, something different. You could just glue that there if you wanted to. There we go. So this is how this card opens. There we go. Now I did another panel with these colors, and I used the die to cut them out, just like I demonstrated earlier. And I have all these butterflies here. And I made a completed card to show you using some of these little butterflies. And I used the embossing folder that comes in that bundle. I'm kind of showing you all the different things you can do with the bundle because it just, I feel that's the best way to really stretch your supply. So even if you don't have this bundle, look at what you have in your stash and think of different ways you can use that. That's the more you see things stretched, like the more times you see me stretch supplies and use as much as I can, it kind of becomes easier for you to go and stretch whatever supplies you have. So I created this card here, and I'm going to show you how I made it. So that With Kindness, by the way, is from that Quince stamp set. Let's go back to the intricate. So I have the intricate here. This is a 3D embossing folder, so I'm going to switch to 3D. So I have a piece of white cardstock here. I'm just putting a little bit of tape runner in 2 spots on the back, and I'm laying it inside of my embossing folder. I'm going to put it on the side that doesn't have the text on the back. So this is the side where the leaves are raised. And I'm going to lay that in there and kind of press that glue down. It doesn't really have to stick much. So I'm first going to take this with that cardstock in there. And I'm running this through my intricate, and look how beautiful that impression is. Gorgeous, right? We're going to step that up. I prefer to use a light ink for this technique, but you can try it with whatever you want. I've demonstrated this before, but it worked really well with this particular one. So this side of the folder, okay, this side where I put my cardstock, the image is raised. Like all those leaves is raised, I can feel them. The leaves are raised. On this side, the background's raised and the leaves are pressed in. So on this side, I'm going to take a light color of ink. This one's called Polar Bear. And I'm just going to smear it all over the background. I like to dab and kind of go back and forth. This is a very light color ink. So I'm going to have to do it a few times because I chose a light color. Closing it up, and I'll run it through again. So the reason I put that little bit of adhesive on the back is to hold it in place so the cardstock doesn't shift as I do this multiple times. You can see the colors starting to go, but remember this, let me show you how light this is. I mean, this is super, see, it's very, very light. I wanted something light. So let's do it again. Now, if you did this with a darker ink, I do recommend still doing it once or twice, or do it 2 or 3 times because it'll smooth it out more. So I did it a few times, and can you see how the background is colored and the raised is white? So I did it, I think 4 times, and look at how it looks on there. So it makes your embossing stand out more. Isn't that gorgeous? Now here's one I did with a darker color. This is Dewdrop, and you can see it works great with that too. I felt like this was too bright on this card, so I wanted that really subtle color. So there you go. There's a technique you can do with your embossing folder. So another product that I really am enjoying that companies are getting really innovative with is 3D embossing folders. It allows you to give beautiful detail. And Altenew has many stencil sets that line up with a folder. So you can like stencil a background and then put it in the folder and emboss that pattern so it stands out. Does that make sense? They have lots of those. I've done them many times in videos, but today I'm just doing the soft butterfly garden background. So this one's part of the bundle too. Along with this zero waste idea, this one I did off screen and I just wanted to show it to you because I think it's adorable. This is the Sugar Rush. There are layering stencils and there is a zero waste die to cut it out. Okay, so here you have the layering stencils, and I just followed the color combo that comes in it. This is another thing that is really innovative for that Altenew does, is they include this in the packaging. So in it, they have card example. If it's a bigger stamp set, it has multiple card examples, and it has a guide on how to layer, which is always helpful. So for mine, I just followed the same colors they did, which was great. Now, here's a little tip that you may not know. You can actually, these examples in the packaging, you can cut them out. They are A2 size. You can cut them out and glue them on the front of a card. If you didn't know. Or sometimes it helps with placement. You can cut it out and put it underneath something. Anyway, but I like the example. So I have this in there. Then you can either buy it separately or together. There is the Sugar Rush die, and all you have to do is line it up and cut it out. So I did the stenciling. Isn't this the sweetest thing? Now, I could line this up. See how it just lines right up and it'll cut it out? But I'm thinking I'm going to leave this background whole because I like it.
And although I really love that background, I didn't turn it into a completed card just yet. I'll save it for the future. All right, next up, I will focus more on die cutting.
This one, when I saw this die set, I was tickled because I thought this is a really clever, innovative product. One of the things I like about Altenew's die sets is they have that keyhole system. And this one has keyhole system, but I have better examples that I'm going to show later, and I'll show you how to use your keyhole system with your press plates. So stay for that, because that's going to be fun. This one's quick. I saw this and I loved this set. It's the Houseplants die set, but it does have the keyhole. But what I was excited about with this is I have a lot of florals that just you sit a floral on a card. I like that this had this pot, and you can do a hanging pot or like a standing pot. And it's just something different. I love the look of this hanging pot. I started putting this together and I used some Altenew cardstocks. Let's see the yellows that I use. The Sun-Kissed, Chamomile, and Pumpkin Pie. And then these blues, I told you they have great blues, right? I used the bright ones before. Now I'm using these kind of moody, dusty ones. Cloudy Sky, and then on my background I'll use Dark Night. Then you can add little flowers. So that's what I did here. I put one of these down and then I added some of the extras. Now I did little flowers here, but let me show you the the keyhole part that this comes with. So the keyhole system that Altenew has, super innovative, the best thing ever, is it helps you to layer your die cuts together to create a layered image that isn't hard to put together. And you're gonna see that in my next examples. This is just a quick example. So this die here cuts petals. And when you look at the petal, I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to see in the video. When you look at the petal, or look at the flower petals, there is a hole at the center. And this is a keyhole shape. This actually looks kind of like a snowman shape. And each one has a snowman shape in the center. This one has a 1 engraved in it. This one has a 3 engraved in it. And this one has a 2 engraved in it. So I know if I start with 1 on the bottom and work my way up to 3 at the top, lining up those holes, my flower will be assembled with very little thought. So let me do that. I'm starting with 1, and what I like to do is just put the liquid adhesive around the keyhole shape. So I have liquid adhesive around the keyhole shape. Then I take the next one, which is number 2, and I line up the hole. So you want to make sure that you can look through and see that hole. Then, in that denim color, pretty. Then the third one, it's got the little 3 engraved on it. I know how to layer those layers together because that keyhole shape, if I line it up every time, it'll be fine. So now there's the center too. I'm going to use my picker because this is the great thing about the picker. I can pick up my little die cut here. Actually, there's double-sided adhesive on the back of this. And I line up that little keyhole. I actually use the piercing end a lot. Let me rotate it. I got it wrong. I use the piercing end a lot to make sure I'm lining it up. I kind of run the piercing end through the hole to make sure it's all lined up. Then they always have a solid die cut to go on top that covers the hole so people don't see the hole. So I glue that on top, and there we have our little flower. Okay, so I created this planter off screen, and I'm going to glue that guy right here in the center. So you can see my final pot. I'm going to turn this into a card, but first I need to do my background. This is another innovative tool that I've really enjoyed using, and that is the Altenew Stampwheel. It's a great stamp positioner that allows you to easily do different techniques or just do stamp positioning. So I'm just going to show you very simply. Eyeball and put this Dark Night cardstock right there, kind of at the center. Flowering Quince, I think it's called, where I use the sentiments. I'm going to use this big mama stamp. And this is one of the easiest ways to do a stamped background. Yeah, pillars or thrillers, you can call it either. And I'm going to put this kind of like at an angle at the top. I then take my plate here, and peel that up. Then I'll flip it over, and I want this to be like a tone-on-tone look. I'll get my dark night card ink here. White would be pretty too. I'm gonna ink this up. So this is gonna be tone-on-tone. It'll be very subtle. And then I flip it over, pop it in, and give it some pressure. Okay, so now I have that image up there in the top corner. You see it? All right, now I'm gonna ink up again. And this is the nice thing about the stamp wheel. This is super easy to do. My cardstock stays where it is, but instead of stamping it this way again, with the hole at the top, I'm gonna rotate so the hole is at the bottom. See, there's a little hole at the top of my plate? I'm gonna rotate it, the hole's at the bottom, and press down. So before I stamped up there, now I'm stamping down here, kind of like a mirror image. All right, so there we go. Get this guy out of here. I like to use my picker for this. And look at that. You get a tone-on-tone stamped background. So if you don't have a background stamp that you want to use, or you want to get more use out of your big images like this, use it to create a background. You don't have to color these big images like this. You could definitely just use them for tone-on-tone backgrounds. I trimmed that down and added it to a white note card. So I have little die cut or little foam circles here, but I need it to be smaller. So I'm gonna cut so it's super tiny, super duper tiny. Now, off screen, I would put a dot of liquid adhesive because this is super tiny. I want to make sure it holds, and this is the only thing that's gonna hold this to our card. But to save time here so it doesn't have to dry, I'm just gonna stick it down. But I would put liquid adhesive behind there. Put this little foam circle right there at the top, or foam shape. It's tiny, it doesn't matter what shape it is. Now I'll remove the adhesive from the back, or the release paper from it. I will take the hole at the top of my planter, hook it around that, and then I have this gold die cut heart that I made. I'm just gonna put that on top of the foam, and now that swings. Isn't that fun? Dee, 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 dee. And it'll stand up like it's straight when the card's standing, but as soon as the recipient takes it out, you feel the movement. I just think it's fun. So that is the Houseplants die set.
All right, next up, I'm going to demonstrate more about the keyhole system and how to change your die cuts to get a fabric look.
I have 2 more keyhole die sets that you gotta see, and I'm gonna do a different thing to each of them to change it up. This one has been out for a while now. I'm not sure. This is a great example of a keyhole die set. This is unique to Altenew. It's something they do with a lot of their layering dies. Look for this little emblem. If it has this emblem on the website, it'll be a keyhole set. And it comes with a layering code, but it's really easy to do. And we're gonna start with that. I have another one. We're gonna do 2 different changes to these to make it a little more interesting. Lots of different dies here, and it actually makes 4 different shaped flowers. And normally it would be confusing which layer together, right? But each flower has a different keyhole shape in the center. So this die right here cuts 3 layers, and all of those layers have a keyhole shaped keyhole. See those? And then the layering pieces for the center of the flowers, these cut all the centers. You can see there's one that has the keyhole and one over here that has the keyhole. So you know how they line up. So what I did is I did some die cutting. These right here are all the ones that have the keyhole hole. So I'm gonna start with number 1. There's a 1 engraved next to the keyhole. So I know that's on the bottom. All right, so I'm gonna put liquid adhesive. I like to go around the hole. And then I line up the keyhole shape with the number 2 leaf or petal layer. And then I come in with number 3. And I line it up. And each time you can see that keyhole through the center. Then we have, I did this from glitter cardstock. Line up that keyhole. This isn't going to want to dry right away, but using my picker to pick up this is like a metallic matte cardstock. Put that on top. And so I have that hole going through all the layers, so I knew exactly how to layer them. There's that hole there, and we need to cover that. They always have one layer to cover that. It's always the same shape as that top layer. You just line up the shape, and look at that. Kind of pull those up. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? So there are there are 4 different shaped flowers like this. One has a lot more layers, like this one. This one has even more layers. There were 7 layers, but this one had a arrow hole. So I knew all of the die cuts with the arrow at the center layered together, and they number them 1 to 7. I start with 1 on the bottom and all the way to 7, so you can see all those layers. So I used Altenew Iceberg, Tide Blue, and Starlight. Oh, and I like the leaf die cuts in this set because they're big and they're connected. So you just put the flowers on it and you don't have to fuss with all the leaves, okay? So this is how they're meant to be. You can see the impression the die made, which gives it a little bit of texture. Now I'm gonna change it up. Now this might not be your thing, but you know, I like to stretch my supplies to get a different look. I have the 3 layers here. I like to start with the darkest at the bottom and go work up to the lightest at the top. I'm gonna do something to these petals that you might not like, but I think it's just something fun you can do. And you could do this with any of your die cuts, any die cuts that aren't delicate. We're going to use a press plate. This press plate is one I've used many times in videos. In fact, I did a video where I did just a stenciled background, and then I used this on it like I'm about to do, and it just makes your background look like fabric. This is a must-have press plate, even if you don't have a better press system. I thought it'd be fun to do an impression on these die cuts to give it texture. This may not be your jam, but it's a way to stretch your supplies. So say you have a big heart die cut you're gonna use on a background and you just wanna add some interest to it. You could do what I'm about to do. So this is the flexible embossing mat. This is what we do. I've used it many times today's video. Following the instructions this die cut machine has for making an impression or dry embossing with the die, but I'm going to use a press plate. Because I have this flexible mat, this press plate's going to leave a really deep impression. So I have my flexible mat, my die cuts, and I'll put my press plate down. I don't have ink on it or anything. I hope not. All right, so now I have texture on this one, just split in half, but I can glue it back together on my little petals, which I think is fun. It's something different. So they look like fabric-y kind of die cuts. So pretend I glued these all together, just following the keyhole system, and look at what you get. You get this texture to your flower. Isn't that fun? And it's a fun way to change it up, I think, right? So you could do this with any die cut. I did that with all of these and I put them together. And then look at on the leaves. Isn't that fun? It's just fun. Remember how I said I like that these are big leaves? So usually just kind of stick them together like this. And look how it's different because we put that texture to it. Little fabric flowers. This background I did with another press plate. It is the Basketweave press plate, and you can see how crisp the image is.
Now I finished up that card off screen. I used that Basketweave background, and then I added the flowers right there at the center with the leaves behind it. I used a Hug Sentiment from the Flowering Quince stamp set and die set that I showed you earlier in the video, and I stamped that in a blue ink to match my blue flowers. And to finish this video up, next I will show you another way you can use your press plates on your die cuts.
So this is the Carnation layering die set. This one's brand new. And it is another good example of that keyhole system. It creates 2 different flowers. One of them has a triangle at the center. So all of these layer together to create this big mama flower. Then this one, all of these die cuts will have a little arrow in the center. And they layer together to be that one. I lined one up here, and that is just this big flower here. And you can see it puts the little indented texture in the petals. Isn't that gorgeous? The beautiful flower or leaves, which again, I love that they're connected, so you can just kind of have them sticking out the side. And here's the other flower layered together. So there's 2 flowers. The cardstock that I used here, this is the purple wine, which is a really unique color. Puffy heart and pink diamond. And by the way, they have inks that match that too. I want to show you another way you can use a press plate. So last time I used this rustic burlap with the embossing mat to do pressure in my die cut machine. So no better press system was needed. It just made that texture on those blue die cuts, right? Now I'm going to use the press plate how it's meant to be used with the better press. You could also do this in foil on your die cuts. So I'm going to put that down onto my better press. I'm going to put a little bit of tape runner on the back and stick it on there. And a little bit of tape runner on the back of this one and stick it on there up here. So now those are stuck to this. So this is Puffy Heart cardstock, and I'm using Puffy Heart ink. On this one, it's purple wine cardstock, so I'll use purple wine ink. I'm going to ink up the bottom of this plate with purple wine. So that'll end up on these bottom die cuts, the darker die cuts. And I'm going to use the Puffy Heart at the top of the plate because that's where those 2 are. Now you can blend colors on here. You can do whatever you want. Lots of things you can do. Now I'll take this, flip it over. So those die cuts are kind of floating above. Now I'll take it through, which will squish it down. And this will give that burlap print and a tiny bit of texture, a lot less texture than what I did before, onto those die cuts. So it just adds some interest. Now there are other press plates, background plates, but I really like this burlap one because it kind of gives that fabric-y look. So now I have die cuts with that press plate pattern. So let me move these out of the way because I did them all earlier. And you can see I used lighter ink, so it's a little more subtle on these. I don't know, just a little more, see how it's a little more subtle? All right, so this is one. I'm doing it in my darkest color. I put liquid adhesive around the center. Now my second layer, the one that says number 2, I did in the same color because I didn't have like 8 different shades of cardstock to layer together. See how there's that whole, I like to use my picker, the piercing end of my picker tool just to kind of run around to make sure they're lined up. Then that was number 2. Now we have number 3. Put liquid adhesive around it. This guy right here is number 3. I'm going to line up the little triangle at the center. Make sure it's all lined up. Then number 4. There's number 4. Then number 5. Line that up. Then we have the next one here. Now we're into the lightest colors. So this guy goes right here. I don't think it's Altenew. So now I put glue on that. Oh, wrong side. Put glue on that. Now this layer here dried pretty, this light pink ink, better press ink on this light pink cardstock dried pretty light. So it's pretty subtle. Then this is the last layer. So they always have one final solid layer to cover all of those little triangle holes. So you just line it up. Okay, now I would usually put something heavy on that while it dries. And there, look at that. All layers up. This is the solid one, just as is. This one, I used that press plate with a little bit of ink or a matching ink color just to add that pattern to it. Now I did a very light color. You can make it more intense with a darker ink. But I think it makes it look like fabric. So this is a little less intense than the blue ones I created using the other die set and making an impression. See how when I made an impression with my die cut machine and press plate, you get this texture. This, you get this crisp pattern when you use the press plate with the better press system. So just different textures to play with, rest of layers, but see how I used a darker ink, so it's a little more obvious on this. So if you don't have a press plate, you could use an embossing folder to get this much texture, or you could use just stamping on your die cuts. Like a stripe stamp would be fun, or a polka dot stamp. But it's really all about mixing and matching. And I wanted to use a lot of the Better Press today because I find that to be such an innovative product. And remember, you can foil with those press plates. So you could foil that detail on these too if you have a glimmer machine or similar machine to that.
All right, here is a completed card that I did off screen. I used a Kristina Werner sentiment from her Checking In stamp set, and then I used one of my press plate backgrounds and rubbed pink ink over the raised area. There you can see the detail in the flowers.
So I tried to pick several of the most innovative products that I've enjoyed using lately, one being these Keyhole die cuts where it lines up. And remember to look for this little emblem on their website, because those are the ones that make it easy to line up. So we got the Keyhole, we got the Better Press plates, the press plates. We have the stencils that all line up with the etching. We have the stencils that line up with the die that cuts them all at once, the zero waste. So, and then the stamp wheel to do quick backgrounds. So there's a lot of different innovative products that I'm very appreciative of companies coming out with. Now, I know some people are overwhelmed by how much that is out there, and I totally get that. But please know, no company expects you to like everything to be your jam. If you go to Nordstrom's, Macy's, whatever, and you go into the clothing department, there are a ton of options, right? A ton of them. They don't expect you to get every one. They expect you to see lots of options and hopefully find one that works for you. And it's the same thing with all these things these companies are coming out with. I know it can be overwhelming because you maybe want it all, just like when I go into Nordstrom's, I want all the shoes, but I just go for what I know works for me. And sometimes you try something new. And what me as a card maker, content creator, video, whatever, what I am is kind of like those, what I do is kind of like the mannequins where there are example outfits at the store of different things together. And it's like giving you ideas, right? So you can look at that and say, ooh, I like that shirt. I have pants like that already at home. I need to use them together. So that's kind of what I feel like we do. I know it's overwhelming sometimes, but I'm hoping this video shows you that these innovative things are meant to make our crafting better, our crafting easier, and help this crafting industry stay strong. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, there we have it. Some thoughts on innovative products and ways to really stretch how you use them to get new looks for your crafting. If you're interested in anything I talked about, it's in the YouTube description below, including a link to my blog where you can see photos of the completed cards. I will also link here at the end to a couple other related videos. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon.